Hello? Thanks, guys. Okay, I was gonna say it's been a while, but obviously it's been a while. I haven't been able to teach in a couple of weeks. I'm so excited to be back. I miss you guys. This is one of my favorite things to do. It's something that I feel like God really has put on my heart to share what I have to share tonight. And so I'm excited that you are all here. I know it's beautiful weather outside. I know that school is coming to a close. And so I just want to say that I so appreciate you guys taking time to do that. And so I'm going to try to be a little bit more interactive today and get you more engaged and walking along in a couple different stories. So I hope you're getting excited about that because I am really excited about that. If it was up to me, I would sit down with each of you individually, really, but in smaller groups, and sit with you for like an hour and just hear about what's going on in your life and get to know you more. And I don't have the opportunity to do that, but I've been really reflecting, and I've been praying for your leaders because they do get to do that. So I would like to give them a nice shout out for your amazing leaders. I'm clapping, so you should clap too. Yeah. Guys, it is incredible. Oh, that's nice. It is incredible that we have people in our lives that are dedicated to walking alongside us in hard times, but also pointing us back to Jesus. And so I just want to remind you that we have amazing individuals in this room. And if I could be there with you, I would, but I'm glad you're in better hands with them. I'm sure they have a lot more wisdom than I do sometimes. So I am going to be wrapping up our series, Cross Equals Love. We've been walking through this not only here, but as a church. I hope you've heard about it. I see some t-shirts, so that's awesome. So Dan started last week. He talked about what it looks like to be unique and different, and why we're unique and different is not necessarily because of who we are, which, yes, that does make us unique and different, but it's because if we choose Jesus, we have the Holy Spirit inside of us, and that makes us live differently. And that's when we see the fruits of the Spirit, like we talked about at the mix this weekend. And so I'm going to continue talking about what this great love means. That not only was it the cross, it was a torture device that Jesus made into the greatest symbol of love, but now what do we do? And I'm asking that same question for those of you that were here in main service this weekend that Steve was asking. Now what? Easter is over. Now what? So I have a question for you. Have any of you just totally missed out on something? Like there was so much going on out here, but you were so focused in here or maybe with your phone that you totally missed it. Anybody? All right, yeah. I, for sure, have definitely totally missed out on seeing my friends slip in a giant puddle because I was totally focused on watching a funny video. And I could have been creating a funny video that could have gone viral, and I would have made a lot of money, but I missed it. But there's another story I want to tell you about when I totally missed it. So I was a sophomore in college. I was an RA, so I lived in the dorm, and I was actually paid to be friends with people. It was amazing. If you ever go to college and want to have as many friends as you can, become an RA, because it's a really easy way to do that. And so I had this responsibility, and I took my job really seriously. But I was also really not confident in myself and doubted a lot. Like I was with other RAs that were really cool. And I'm talking like they all wore Patagonia, like Patagonias and like Patagonia shoes, which I'm sure are a thing, and like Patagonia bags and hats. And they were like really outdoorsy, and they could all start fires, and they could sing, and they were really smart and wise. And you would just sit and be like, why couldn't I think of that? And I spent this whole couple weeks at the beginning of the year in RA training wishing I was like them. Totally wishing I was like them. I mean, at every point I would talk to my boss, who was my resident director, and I would say, Kim, why can't I be more like Becca? Like, she literally just speaks wisdom. Like, where's that for me? Like, do I need to pray for that? Do I need to read more books? And I beat myself up all week long. And we came to the night before we were heading back to school to start the school year, and students were going to arrive, and we're sitting around a bonfire because it's August, and that is what you do when summer is coming. You sit around bonfires. And I was just thinking about the year and feeling a lot of pressure and really up in my head, very stuck here in what I was experiencing, what I thought. And I had this moment with Kim where she said, Abby, I didn't need another Becca on this team. I hired you because of who you are and what you bring to the team. And I had a moment like that where I was like, oh, okay, well, I didn't think of it that way because I was so focused on what I wasn't. And I totally missed it. I totally missed what I brought to the team and what I was going to be capable of and what our team was going to be capable of, because I was so focused on myself, what I was thinking, tearing myself down, that I totally missed it. And I think that the culture that we live in, because we're so right here all the time, or we're so focused on what we want and how our order should be and who's helping me, that we miss stuff. Like we miss out on artwork. And I know that sounds really lame because we don't have an appreciation for it, but there are people that have incredible talent to take things from their brain and put it on paper. If you've ever tried to draw a person and it's not a stick person, I should have drawn that and showed that to you. It would have been terrible. But they have this ability and this gift that we miss out on celebrating with them because we don't think it's important. And we miss out on things like taking risks and going on really crazy roller coasters because we're just afraid we can't trust the mechanics or whatever for some of us. And maybe some of us miss out on friendships because we're really afraid of letting down our walls and what they're going to think about us, and I don't fit in with them, or maybe they're too weird, or they didn't say the right thing and the teacher thinks they're whatever. We miss out on stuff. Guys, God is moving around us. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if I would have been able to communicate that when I was sitting in your seat. But he's moving around us. Lives are changing. And I don't want us to miss out on it. And I don't know if we're missing out because we're so focused on ourselves, or we have our doubts or our fears or our opinions or expectations. I don't know what it is for you. But we're going to go on a journey today. We're going to investigate some stories in the gospel. And I just want to encourage you for the next 15 minutes to stick with me and try not to miss it and to see what God is doing. Because when we read these stories, we not only learn more about who Jesus is and what his character is, but we learn what he's offering us, what our life could look like. So that's what I'm challenging you to do while we walk through these stories. Ask yourself, what does this mean for me? Because if we miss out on Jesus, if we miss out on seeing God work and move, and we aren't able to translate that into our life, I'm going to be honest, we're going to find ourselves lost. We're going to find ourselves hopeless. We're going to find ourselves really scared and probably kind of bored. And if that leaves you interested in what we're going to talk about, follow along. All right. So we are going to be talking about some guys who had the same choice as we do to decide if they're going to miss out or not. And they're the disciples. Has anyone heard of the disciples before? Nice. All right. So I am looking forward to talking about them. They're some cool dudes. I think it's important that we're taking a look at them because in order to commit to something, don't you guys need to look at Yelp first? Like a restaurant, you're like, oh, is this gonna be a good restaurant? Or I find a lot of my clothes or clothing ideas on #ads from Instagram because people are like, oh, sharing what they did, which I think is really cool. I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. I'm not gonna commit to it until I see someone else doing it. Or I did this all the time in high school. Who found a friend who has the same class as you but an hour before, so that before you take the test, you're like, okay, bro, how bad was it? Did we study the right stuff? Does anyone do that? Amelia's like, yeah, for sure I do that. Yeah, we want to know what we're getting ourselves into, right? So we're going to take a look at the disciples who were in the same position. They walked alongside Jesus for 3 years before they were really convinced that he was who he said he was. Right? There were definitely some circumstances that they were getting there. There was confirmation. They're like, yeah, I think this guy, they were blown away by the stuff that he was doing. But for a lot of them, it wasn't until after he rose from the dead that they were like, whoa, guys, hold up, peace for real. So if you find yourself in a place where you're like, I'm not really sure about this Jesus thing, or I don't really know if I can believe all this God stuff, I'm really glad you're here. I'm always glad you're here, but I'm really glad you're here tonight because we're going to be taking a look at some things and some stories, and I'm going to create some space for you to kind of navigate what it looks like to just be wondering. Because people that walked alongside Jesus, the core 12 people that did that, they had their doubts. And they were walking right alongside him for years, day in and day out. So why wouldn't we have those? You know what I mean? So if you are in that place where you're like, yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out, awesome. You're in a safe place. I'm so glad you're here. If you love Jesus and you're in, I'm really glad you're here too, because you're going to learn more about Jesus and what there is to love about him. So, we are going to dive into Luke chapter 15. If anyone has their Bible, if you have it, would you raise it up? Okay, Mike, I'm sorry, you don't count. I can't see who's back there. Oh, Lindsay, you don't count either. Okay, well, if a student brings a Bible, I was going to give them, oh, Jordan. Bro, meet me after. I got something for you, okay? We're looking at Luke 15. If you have your Bible app, which I for sure use a Bible app, go ahead and open that up. And we are looking at, like I said, Luke chapter 15. We're going to read verse 1 through 10. So we're taking a look at a story. So I have two questions for you. For those of you who have ever asked yourself, where do I belong? Or those of you who have ever felt unseen, looked over, or lost, this story is for you. So I'm going to hang this up right here. Look, I tried to get creative. We got some visuals for our visual learners. Okay. I heard that. That was good. Okay. Tax collectors and sinners. We're starting off verse 1. The tax collectors and sinners all came to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law began to complain. Look at this man. Welcomes sinners and even eats with them. Then Jesus told them this story. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep but loses one of them. Then he will leave the other 99 sheep in the open field and go out and look for the lost sheep until he finds it. And when he finds it, he happily puts it on his shoulders and goes home. He calls to his friends and neighbors and says, "Be happy with me, because I have found my lost sheep." In the same way, I tell you, there is more joy in heaven over one sinner who changes his heart and life than over 99 good people who don't need to change. And picking up in verse 8, suppose a woman has 10 silver coins but loses one. She will light a lamp, sweep the house, look carefully for the coin until she finds it. And when she finds it, she will call her friends and neighbors and say, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God when one sinner changes his heart and life. Now, guys, we are sons and daughters who belong to God. That's our identity. That's who we are. And we're lost, and Jesus came and found us and saved us from ourselves. A couple chapters later in chapter 19, there's a verse that says, for the Son of Man, which is a name for Jesus, came to seek and save the lost. That was his mission coming here, was looking for you and for me. So if you've ever felt lost, you can be found in Jesus, and he's searching for you. He has you here tonight. That's intentional. He has a plan for you. He's called you, and he has you here. He's looking for you. He wants you to know him and to be known by him. Now, this idea of a king, because Jesus is our king, searching for one of anything, is crazy. And Luke knew that. He wrote that down for people to read for generations because that is what Jesus is about. So no matter how lost you've become, or if you were once found and are lost again, Jesus never stops looking for you and celebrates when he finds you. So we're going to hang up lost. We become found. That is part of Jesus' story. We are found in him. So again, I'm going back to when we're learning about who Jesus is. If you feel lost, you can be found in him. So we're moving on to the next one. So we all have hope, right? We experience hope in something. We raise our hand. I'm really trying for the participation today, you guys. All right. So we all have hope. We have desires and expectations for how people should be, right? We hope we're going to have this friend and they're going to be our friend forever. Or we hope that our sibling is going to do all the chores so that we don't have to. But sometimes it doesn't always turn out that way. And the people of Jesus' day, they were oppressed by a people, the Romans. The word oppressed means that they were kept from doing what they wanted to do. Essentially, they had rules and laws that were out of their control. And I think that we have oppression today too. It's more subtle. Obviously, we live in the United States of America and we do have freedom, and so we have oppression in a different way. I think that we're oppressed by expectations that we set, not only for other people, but for ourselves. Maybe some of us, it's not expectations that are oppressing us, but it's addictions that we have. Maybe it's limitations that we feel or circumstances we find ourselves in, or maybe it's past mistakes. Have you ever felt hopeless? I know I have in certain situations, and it's felt like literally no matter what I can do, things won't change. Well, when the disciples were walking alongside Jesus, they came across a lot of different people that were experiencing this hopelessness. And John captures this story in chapter 5, verses 1 through 9, the beginning of verse 9. It says, later Jesus went to Jerusalem for a special feast. They had a lot of feasts in Jesus' time. I don't know why we miss out on that, but it says, in Jerusalem there was a pool with 5 covered porches, which is called Bethesda in the Hebrew language. This pool is near the sheep gate. Many sick people were lying on the porches beside the pool. Some were blind, some were crippled, and some were paralyzed. And they waited for the water to move. They believed that there was this angel that came down, and if the water moved, it had healing properties, and so they just needed to go into the pool and be healed. It says the first person to get into the pool experienced that healing from sickness. So in verse 5, a man was laying there who had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw the man and knew that he had been sick for such a long time, because Jesus knows everything, he said to him, do you want to be well? Duh. The sick man answered, sir, there is no one to help me get into the pool when the water starts moving. While I'm coming to the water, someone else gets in the way before me. Then Jesus said, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. And immediately the man did. He picked up his mat and he began to walk. What? That's cool. I don't know if we necessarily see people picking up their mats and walking, but I've definitely seen people's lives change in that way, where they've experienced a freedom from something that was holding them back that they no longer have to experience anymore because of who Jesus is. This guy that we were just reading about was so stuck in his circumstances that when Jesus asked him if he wanted to get well, he gave him an excuse of like, it's never going to happen for me. He didn't know who Jesus was. He was an outcast. He was powerless to change his circumstances. But Jesus met him in the wallowing of his situation, and I think that's really cool. Jesus went to him. He meets us when we feel hopeless. We just need to have eyes to see that happening. Guys, 38 years is a really long time to be sick. I think for most of us, that's longer than we've been alive. So it makes sense that he was so caught up in this place of feeling bad for himself and hopeless. But even to be in a place where you feel so far gone, Jesus can still bring hope. That small interaction with Jesus on what seemed to be probably a pretty ordinary day in that 38 years of being sick changed his life forever. That hope that Jesus brought him, that he didn't even know to expect, that's offered to us too. Jesus meets us in our hopelessness. That's who he is. And he's going to bring hope when we don't always expect it sometimes. Oh, I forgot. Well, we're winging it, right, guys? If you're ever afraid to do what your dreams are and you're holding back because you need to be perfect, just remember me. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, I want to move on to our next story. But first, I'm going to ask for participation. That's your cue to participate. Okay, just so we're clear. Raise your hand if you've ever felt scared. Okay, all right. Put your hands down. Next question, a little bit harder. Raise your hand if you've ever felt worried. All right, so we're, I think, at 100. It's hard to see up here. I think we can all agree that feeling scared and feeling worried are part of the human condition. And I'm going to do another here. So at least we can all agree that we can get on the same page about fear and worry. So I'm going to paint a picture for you guys. What if you could imagine neither of those things existed? Thank you. Oh, thank you. I love participation. What if neither of those things existed, guys? What if you could wake up tomorrow morning and you weren't worried about what outfit you were going to put on because the cute boy's going to see you, or you weren't thinking about, oh, I did that stupid thing and it might have been caught on video and it might show up on social media today, or you didn't have to worry about that stuff. It seems impossible, right? We're so afraid. We have so much worry about the things that are outside of our control. But the thing is that I believe that living like that is possible. I've done it. Remember how I was talking about earlier about how much insecurity I had about how I showed up? That I was so nervous about all the other RAs were thinking about me, and was I going to be a good fit for this team, and was I going to use my gifts? Was I going to honor God in what I was doing? Would my parents be proud of me? Was I cool enough? Was I learning enough? Was I going to be a good leader? Guys, they were endless questions, and I didn't believe I was capable of any of that. I wanted to be. I knew that people told me God thought I would be. But then I can get up in front of you guys and be really open and real. And this is my favorite place to be, is being open and real so that you guys can learn from what I'm experiencing. And Mark had a similar experience that we're going to take a look at in chapter 5. It was just a normal day. Jesus had gained some popularity at this point. He had been traveling from place to place, and it was getting around that he was like, okay, what's this Jesus guy going to do next? So there were tons of crowds of people. But you're a disciple, so you're used to that by now. So in verse 21, it says, when Jesus went into the boat back to the other side of the lake, a large crowd had gathered around him. A leader of the synagogue named Jairus came there, saw Jesus, and fell at his feet. He begged Jesus, saying again and again, my daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so she will be healed and will live. So Jesus decided he would go. The man had faith, and he responded to him. But there's a large crowd gathering around him. There's a lot of people moving. Jesus was pushed very close together with people. In verse 25, it says, among them was a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered very much from many doctors and had spent all the money she had. But instead of improving, she was getting worse. Guys, think about being this woman. Now, the thing you have to remember, too, that we don't experience in our culture today, if this was her circumstance, she was cast out. She wasn't able to be in her community. So not only had she run out of money, she didn't have she didn't have people around her supporting her, and she also had a disease and was probably in pain. So she was probably afraid of, oh, what if someone recognizes me? I'm not supposed to be out here, but I've heard of what Jesus can do, and I just have to know if this will work. Verse 27, when the woman heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his coat. She touched his coat. She didn't even need to see his eyes or hear his voice. She just believed he had so much power that she just touched his coat. She thought, if I can touch his clothes, I will be healed. And instantly her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed from her disease. Literally at once, Jesus felt the power go out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? The disciples are like, bro, are you serious? Look at all these people. Look at how many people are pushing against you, and you ask who touched me? Verse 32, but Jesus continued looking around to see who had touched him. He had to know who it was. The woman, knowing that she was healed, came and fell at Jesus' feet, shaking with fear. She told him the whole truth. Jesus said to her, dear woman, you are made well because you believed. Now go in peace, be healed of your disease. Guys, her worst fear, she was saved from. She thought she was being outcasted again. She might have died from that disease, and Jesus healed her, and he saved her. She took a risk. I'm sure, there's no way she wasn't feeling anxiety and worried and fear about stepping out like that. But she didn't have a choice. She knew she needed some of that power, and fear didn't stop her. And because of that, she had a new life, a brand new life. She was able to engage in community again. She might have been able to return back to work. She might have been able to see family again that she didn't get to see. This is the kind of work that Jesus does. He makes what's wrong right. And you know what? I bet she never forgot about Jesus. I bet probably people got sick of hearing about that story because she told it so often. Right? She was, for 12 years, this was her circumstance, and one interaction with Jesus, and everything is different. How would you not talk about that? Why do we not talk about it? Why do we just miss it? Yeah, praise Jesus, like this and this happened in my life. Or yeah, I see God showed up in that. Why aren't we sharing it? Like the disciples are sharing, they're seeing these incredible things happening. They can't help themselves but share. The Gospel of Mark is only 16 chapters, so for him to take time in the 16 chapters to tell that little story, he knew what a big deal that was and that other people had to know. Are you guys going to keep letting fear keep you from growing and developing your faith and deepening your trust? Something you need to think about. We have to step out of our comfort zone if we're going to grow. All right. Are you ready? I have another question for you. Have you ever thought about life and asked yourself, is this seriously it? Yeah. Have you ever wished that there was more than just getting up, going to school, maybe going to practice, eating dinner, doing your homework, going to bed, repeat? Thank you for the participation. Well, what if I told you that you were created perfectly and intentionally? All your gifts, all your interests, what you're passionate about, how you show up, what you like, all of those things were created specifically for you to reflect God. We were made in his image. We were made to give him glory. So in everything that we do, we can be intentional. It's all a reflection of him. And the reality is, guys, if you're not showing up holy, you're not the only one missing out. We're a church body. We're supposed to work together, and if you're not holy showing up and being who you are, we can't accomplish the mission that God gave us. We can't work together if we aren't aware of what you bring to the table because we never really get to know you, and you don't celebrate and figure out what you bring to the table. Dan brought up this verse, John 13:34-35, last week when he was talking about being an irresistible community. How are people going to know who we are? And Jesus says, I give you a new command, love each other. You must love each other as I have loved you. All people will know that you are followers if you love each other. To love people is our command. It's what we're called to. How do you think we're doing at that? In Matthew 28:18-20, it says, then Jesus came to them. These are some of the last things he's saying to his disciples, so it's real good stuff. He says to them, all power in heaven and on earth is given to me. So go and make followers of all people in the world. Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach them to obey everything that I have taught you, and I will be with you always, to the very end of the age. So Jesus left the disciples with a final mission, to share his love, the good news, what we call the gospel, with everybody. How do you think we're doing at that? Do you see that Jesus not only found us, not only gave us hope, not only conquered our fears, but he gave us a purpose. He gave us a mission. And he gave us ways to accomplish it that are uniquely ours that we can celebrate. So if you find yourself in moments where you're feeling bored, I would encourage you to ask, what are you really doing with your life? And I'm not talking about the kind of bored when you're sitting in the doctor's office and waiting for your appointment, because that's really real. I'm talking about the moments when you're sitting by yourself what's the point? The point is to love one another. You've been saved and created for that purpose. You have that purpose. That is your purpose. And so you can live into that. And when you live into that, we're going to see more of the life change that Jesus did. We're going to see more people experiencing the freedom like that woman did in the crowd because she believes in the power that everyone's talking about, that we are talking about. Because I know for a fact, because I know who God is, that he has changed your life or is going to change your life if you let him. So we have something to talk about. We need to be doing that. If we're not doing that, we're missing out. We're missing out. Are you going to accept that purpose? Are you going to live into that? Or are you going to miss out? I know that sounds dramatic. I tend to be really dramatic, but I'm being really serious. Believe me when I tell you that I've seen people choose to miss out. And I know what their lives look like, and I don't want that for you. So really be thinking about that. Are you going to engage? Are you going to pay attention to what's actually already happening around you, or are you going to miss out? So I know that we've covered a lot tonight, a lot of good stuff, I hope. I hope you learned something. I hope you saw Jesus in a new way, or you were encouraged in a different way, or maybe something was put in a different light. When I was preparing for what we're going to talk about tonight, I was getting really fired up. I almost read all 4 Gospels because I wanted to get the stuff that I felt like you guys could really relate to and would make sense. And I was just blown away by what Jesus really offers. It's so different than any other religion, any other kind of following. It's concrete. It's something that we can hold on to and that people have been holding on to and talking about for 2,000 years. Something that you can trust in. I know it's upside down. I know it's hard to believe. And maybe it's confusing. Maybe it's hard to choose. I get that. But there's no way that I'm going to miss out on seeing life change happen. And I want you to see all the experience, this kind of belonging. I want this incredible hope for you, this unshakable faith and a clear purpose. That's why I wake up every morning. That's why I work so hard at my job, so that you experience God in a way deeper way than I ever have. I want that for you guys. Your small groups leaders want that for you. So don't miss out. I want to see you confident in who you are and what you're here for. I want to see you grow. I want you to see you unable to hold back talking about Jesus because he has radically changed your life. I know Katie talked about this before. We've got New Life Weekend coming up this weekend. And that means baptisms are happening. We have 30 people signed up for baptism, and 4 of them are students. Yes! Oh! Yes, 4 of them are students, guys. And this year alone, there have been 9 of you that have stood up and said, I'm getting baptized. I'm not missing out on what God's doing. But I'm not great at math, but I'm pretty sure there's more than 9 of us in here. Pretty sure. Yeah, thanks, Nate. Yeah. And I know that we're all on a journey, and, just like the disciples, they had 3 years of literally interacting with Jesus, so we're trying to figure out if this is for us, if we even care if we miss out, or there are some of us that are like, yes, Abby, I just want to continue learning more, and we're all in this room. And that's the beauty of being in church community together, is because we all belong, no matter where we are on that journey. I'm glad that you're all here. Maybe for you tonight, this is the night where you say, yeah, I don't want to miss out on what Jesus is doing. I haven't really committed to that yet, but I want to learn more about that, and I want to follow him. I really thought that Jesus was about rules and acting a certain way and needing to follow what my parents say, or I had to be perfect, or I couldn't do this, but after hearing about what the disciples experienced, I want that in my life. And so the band's going to come up and play, and when they do that, we're going to have a moment, and I'm going to invite you to pray with me. It's going to be this moment where you just say, yes, I cannot do this by myself. I make a mess of life on my own. And I need Jesus to save me, but I also want to follow him, and I want to learn what life change looks like that. And so I'm going to invite you to do that, but before I do, I want to talk to us who are already following Jesus. To say, guys, our command is to love, but it's also to share what Jesus is doing in our life. And yeah, you can do that with your friends, and that's a great place to start, but it should become a place where you are already talking about it, and it's so natural in your speech. We talk about the things we love. We talk about the things that impact our life. And so I want to encourage you to join in with the people that have been talking about Jesus for the last 2,000 years. We're a part of something. Life change is happening. I was just at staff meeting today hearing story after story after story of people in our community that are, Jesus is literally showing up in ways that we can't even fathom. And if you want to hear what those stories look like, please find me. I'd love to talk to them about you. And maybe we just have a night where we talk about what Jesus is doing, and that's what we need to do next step. But it's part of being in our relationship with Jesus that we're sharing with people what he did for us. Because you want to see that life change in them too. So I'm going to invite you guys to stand with me. And I really want you to consider this, no matter where you are in that journey that I was talking about, of what it means for you to miss out. Maybe it just means you need to show up. Maybe it means that you have a conversation with your friend that you know that Jesus has been tugging on your heart to have. You need to answer that question. But know that there's a community of people, your leaders, myself, that would love to have a conversation with you to talk about what that would look like, because it can be kind of awkward, and we need training in that. And that's okay. So like I said before, if tonight's your night where really you feel like Jesus is tugging on your heart and it's time for you to just say, okay, I'm in, I don't know what all this means, but I know that I need you, and I want to take the next step on what that looks like. I'm going to pray for us right now, so you can go ahead and bow your heads. So if that's you, you can just repeat after me in your head or out loud if you feel so led. Say, Jesus, I'm a mess. I tried this thing on my own. I tried to be good. I tried to follow the rules. I tried all the things that people told me to try, and it did not work, and I was left feeling scared and broken, lonely and hopeless. But I've heard about you, and I want what you can give me. I need you to save me. I also need you to give me the power to figure out the rest of this stuff, and I know you will when that needs to be. So I surrender to you the need to be saved by you, and I commit to telling people what you've done in my life, how you've changed me. We pray this in Jesus' powerful name. Amen.